Welcome to episode 1 of Jonathan Reads His Thesis. Okay. Is crowdfunding a sustainable research funding model for Australian universities? A thesis submitted in fulfilment of the requirements for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy. Jonathan O'Donnell, BA, ANU. Graduate School of Business and Law, College of Business and Law, RMIT University, 30th of June, 2023. I certify that except where due acknowledgement has been made, this research is that of the author alone. The content of this research submission is the result of work which has been carried out since the official commencement date of the approved research program. Any editorial work, paid or unpaid, carried out by a third party is acknowledged, and ethics procedures and guidelines have been followed. In addition, I certify that this submission contains no material previously submitted for award of any qualification at any other university or institution, unless approved for a joint award with another institution, and acknowledge that no part of this work will, in the future, be used in a submission in my name for any other qualification in any university or other tertiary institution without the prior approval of the university and, where applicable, any partner institution responsible for the joint award of this degree. I acknowledge that copyright of any published works contained within this thesis resides with the copyright holders of those works. I give permission for the digital version of my research submission to be made available on the web via the university's digital research repository, unless permission has been granted by the university to restrict access for a period of time. I acknowledge the support I've received for my research through the provision of an Australian Government Research Training Program scholarship. Jonathan O'Donnell, 30th of June, 2023. Acknowledgements to be written. Need to acknowledge Pip and Sophie's contribution as editors. That must be acknowledged. Table of contents to follow. List of figures. Figure 2.1, Higher Education Research and Development. Heard. By source of funds. Australian Bureau of Statistics, 2022. Figure 2.2, University income by source drawn from the emergence of entrepreneurial public universities in Australia. Gallagher, 2000. Figure 3.1, 10 most common bibliographic items collected during this research. Figure 3.2, how online engagement leads to a crowd-funded research project. Burns et al., 2014a. Figure 3.3, knowledge map of education crowdfunding from Turuvia and Capo in press. Need to check. We'll need to update these figures. List of tables. Table 2.1, date of establishment of Australian universities, does not include Australian campuses of international universities. Table 3.1, systematic and bibliographic reviews of crowdfunded literature ordered by years surveyed. Table 3.2, a systematic review of topics related to crowdfunding in universities, ordered by years surveyed. Others to follow. List of acronyms to follow. Abstract. Since 2011, a small number of Australian university staff have been using crowdfunding campaigns to fund their research. This project explores crowdfunding as a new model of research funding. I sought to understand whether it could be a suitable model for research funding. That's not a good sign. There's 80,000 words to go yet. Whether it could be a sustainable model for research funding in Australian universities. Crowdfunding has the potential to provide new research funds in a system that is experiencing low levels of support from government. Perhaps more importantly, it provides a way for academics to engage directly with people who value their research. This community engagement draws upon concepts of openness and generosity to build an audience for university research. Drawing on a review of crowdfunding projects involving Australian university staff and interviews with academics and administrators, I examine the shift in practices required to accommodate crowdfunding as a research funding mechanism. Drawing a review of I find that drawing on a review of crowdfunding projects involving Australian university staff and interviews with academics and administrators, I examine the shifts in practices required to accommodate crowdfunding as a research funding mechanism. I find that research crowdfunding can work as a sustainable funding mechanism for a very small proportion of academics. Most universities have not embraced research crowdfunding, most Australian universities. Research crowdfunding. The majority of academics who have undertaken one crowdfunding campaign have chosen not to do another. Not to undertake another. I explore the reasons for this, including examining the issues and risks inherent in research crowdfunding and its position within the norms of research behaviour. Those universities that want to support crowdfunding, I provide advice on how to develop a business case for research crowdfunding and how to administer it. I find that research crowdfunding can work as a sustainable funding mechanism for a very small proportion of academics. Most Australian universities have not embraced research crowdfunding. The majority of academics who have undertaken the majority of academics who have undertaken one crowdfunding campaign have chosen not to undertake another. I explore the reasons for this, including examining the issues and risks inherent in research crowdfunding and its position within the norms of research behaviour and expectations. For those universities that want to support crowdfunding, I provide advice on how to develop a business case for research crowdfunding and how to administer it. Preface. This is practitioner-based research. I have over 30 years of experience in research administration in the Australian university sector, working at all levels: National Funding Council, Central University Research Office, academic divisional level, and embedded in research centres. In 1986-87, I gained my second ever job working for the Australian Research Grants Committee in Canberra. It was a significant year for me as it led to a career in universities. Over the span of my career, I've worked in large central administration teams and in research centres with 4 employees. I've worked as a research assistant on funded grants and helped people win grants to hire others as research assistants. I've assisted academics win $35 million bids, and I've supported academics who have failed to win bids worth 1,000th as much. In the late 1980s, I began work at Chisholm Institute in Melbourne as the changes of the Unified National System, see introduction, were being implemented across Australia. In 1990, I was still working at Chisholm Institute when it merged with Monash University as part of these changes. In that year, I moved to the Melbourne Institute of Technology, which was in ultimately unsuccessful merger discussions with Footscray Institute of Technology. I was there in 1992 when it merged with Phillip Institute of Technology and became RMIT University. In 1993-94, I was hired as a research assistant on a project to develop a guide for non-traditional research areas. I interviewed academics from areas such as home economics and nursing to understand what support they needed to successfully undertake research. This was my first taste of the research process, and I liked it. One of the project leaders went on to become one of my supervisors for this PhD. I liked that project because it provided advice and support for academics beyond my own university. In 2011, my colleague Chin Koo and I established the Research Whisperer blog, which also sought to support academics beyond our university. For 10 years, we've been publishing short pieces on doing research in academia and engaging with academics and administrators on social media. In 2012, while working in research administration at RMIT University, where I'm enrolled as a student for this PhD, I attended a talk about crowdfunding by Rick Chen, one of the founders of the Possible crowdfunding platform. I know it was 2012 because it inspired me to write my first blog post about crowdfunding, Kickstarter versus the National Science Foundation. At the time, I thought that crowdfunding was revolutionary. I still do. In 2014, I was invited to give a talk to support a new crowdfunding platform for research projects. I said to the academic crowdfunders at that event that their experience was very valuable because so few people had done what they had done. Afterwards, I thought it might be interesting to find out more about these academic crowdfunders. By 2015, I had enrolled in a Master's by Research to do that, which converted to this PhD in 2017. My understanding of crowdfunding and its place in Australian universities has grown a lot over the course of this research. Early on, in response to a naive statement that lots of academics were undertaking crowdfunding, my supervisors challenged me to find out just how many there were. This resulted in a review of crowdfunding campaigns organised by Australian academics, which formed the bulk of the work for my Master's. What I found was extraordinary. Australian academics were involved in crowdfunding campaigns for all sorts of activities. For example, one of the earliest campaigns I could find was a campaign by art practice academics to raise funds for circus equipment. Having spent much of my working life revising Research Council grant applications, this fresh approach was astonishing. These academics were appealing for funding with just a short video and several paragraphs describing their project. They gained their funding from hundreds of people. It was completely different from any other research funding that I knew about. What I found was also concerning. In my search, I couldn't find the names for over half the universities in Australia. Only 3 universities had more than 5 applications, 5 campaigns. Only 3 universities had more than 5 campaigns. I reached out to 2 universities that had the most structured approaches and asked for permission to interview their staff. These interviews formed the bulk of the data for my PhD. Part-time PhDs take a long time. By the end of 2019, I was ready to present my mid-candidature review, including plans for a swathe of new work across 2020 and 2021. By the end of 2019, I was ready to present my mid-candidature review, including plans for a swathe of new work across 2020 and 2021. In March 2020, the university where I worked and the university where I studied, along with every other university in Victoria, went into lockdown in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. They stayed locked down for the majority of the next 2 years. During the pandemic, I experienced a profound loss of faith. After spending most of my working life in universities, I saw international leaders like Boris Johnson, Jair Bolsonaro, and Donald Trump repudiate evidence-backed policy. In Australia, the government provided no support for universities during the lockdowns. The universities responded with massive staff layoffs. After working almost half my life in universities, I was horrified to see them neglected by politicians and managers. My therapist helped me to understand that I would survive. I did. my belief in crowdfunding has survived too. I still think it is extraordinary, even though my understanding is a little more nuanced now. That's it. Thank you very much. I'll be back next time with the introduction. This is fun, sort of.